Hi, and welcome to Experience Points by University XP. On Experience Points, we explore different ways we can learn from games. I'm your host, Dave Ang from Games-Based Learning by University XP. Find out more by going to universityxp.com. We all know games are fun, that's why we play them. But when we use games for education, training, or serious learning, the challenge is making sure players aren't just playing, they're actually learning. In this episode, we'll explore how learning objectives and game goals overlap, how serious games are designed for impact, and how we measure success beyond just winning. So, buckle up, because today we're unlocking the next level of game-based learning. Before we start blending game goals with learning outcomes, let's clarify something. Learning objectives and learning outcomes are not the same thing. Learning objectives come from the instructor's perspective, what they want students to learn. Think of it like a mission statement. Learning outcomes, on the other hand, are student-focused, what they achieve by the end. For example, an instructor might set a learning objective like, students will understand market demands. But a learning outcome? That's more actionable. For example, consider the learning outcome. Students will design a product that meets consumer needs. And games? They work the same way. Designers set game goals such as defeat the boss and solve the puzzle. But the real magic happens in what players learn through play. So, how do we bridge this gap? That's where game-based learning comes in. Games-based learning isn't just about using games in the classroom, it's about leveraging gameplay to teach concepts, develop skills, and change behavior. The best games naturally engage players while reinforcing learning objectives. For example, take the Minecraft Education Edition that teaches creativity and problem-solving through exploration. The Kerbal Space Program introduces physics and engineering in a way textbooks never could. And the game Civilization makes history come alive through strategic gameplay. But here's the catch. Many of these weren't designed for education. They've been adapted, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. That's why educators and designers turn to serious games which are built from the ground up for learning. And that's where things get interesting. Now let's talk about serious games. Games that aren't just played for fun, but are designed for learning. Unlike commercial games adapted for education, serious games build learning objectives right into gameplay. Let's start by examining the game Spent. This is a game that puts players in the shoes of someone struggling to make ends meet. Every decision in the game carries weight, teaching financial literacy through experience and not lectures. But what makes serious games powerful is how they engage players. They don't just tell you what to learn, they immerse you in learning. But here's the challenge. A game can be designed with the best learning objectives in mind, but if the player's experience isn't right, those lessons won't stick. And that's where design matters most. Learning and gaming are both about experience. If the experience isn't engaging, the learning won't happen. That's why the learner and player experience is crucial. Great learning games don't just tell players what to do, they let them discover it. The key is meaningful choices. Take the Karate Kid. Daniel wasn't told to practice martial arts. He learned through wax on, wax off, building muscle memory without realizing it. That's goal substitution, where game objectives align with learning outcomes. When players feel immersed, they stop seeing the game as education and start experiencing it as play. That's when real learning happens. But how do we design games that create these immersive learning experiences? It starts by structuring the game correctly from the start. Designing a learning game isn't just about adding content, it's about crafting an experience where gameplay naturally reinforces learning. That starts with structure. First, every game has a core loop, the repeatable actions players take. In serious games, that loop should drive learning outcomes. If players aren't practicing the right skills, they're just playing, not learning. Second, theme and mechanics must work together. If a game teaches financial literacy, but its mechanics don't require budgeting or decision-making, the lesson won't stick. Finally, testing is everything. A minimum viable product, MVP, lets designers see if players learn what they're supposed to. Lastly, it comes down to examining player actions. If players are just gaming the system instead of engaging with it, then it's back to the drawing board. So, once the game is built, how do we measure if it's working? Designing a great learning game is one thing, but proving it works is another. So how do we measure success? The easiest way is in-game tracking. Monitoring player progress, choices, and behaviors. If a game is supposed to be teaching teamwork, then can we actually observe players collaborating? Or are they just rushing to win? Another method is post-game debriefs. Talking about the experience helps players reflect on what they learned. This is especially useful for commercial games adapted for education, where the learning isn't always apparent. Then there's the long-term impact. Are players applying their new skills outside the game? That's ultimately harder to track, but it is the real measure of success. Bottom line, if learning outcomes and game goals don't align, the game fails as a teaching tool. But when it's done right, it becomes the ultimate learning experience. Let's take a moment to review what we've learned. First, learning objectives and outcomes aren't the same objectives that come from the instructor. Instead, outcomes focus on the learner. Games-based learning adapts commercial games for education, while serious games are built with learning in mind from the start. So, what is the key to a great learning game? The answer is the player experience. Mechanics should align with learning objectives, and meaningful choices should drive engagement. Testing and iteration ensure the game isn't just fun, but effective. Finally, assessment matters. Whether through in-game tracking, debriefs, or long-term impact, a game's success is measured by what players take away from it. I hope you found this episode useful. If you'd like to learn more, then a great place to start is with my free course on gamification. You can sign up for it at universityxp.com/gamification. You can also get a full transcript of this episode, including links to references in the description or show notes. Thanks for joining me. Again, I'm your host, Dave Eng from Game-Based Learning by University XP. On Experience Points, we explore different ways we can learn from games. If you like this episode, please consider commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Subscribing is absolutely free and ensures that you'll get the next episode of Experience Points delivered directly to you. I'd also love it if you took some time to rate the show. I live to lift others with learning, so if you found this episode useful, consider sharing it with someone who could also benefit. Also, make sure to visit University XP online at universityxp.com. University XP is also on Twitter at university_XP and on Facebook and LinkedIn as University XP. Also, feel free to email me anytime. My email address is dave@universityxp.com. Game on.